Hi, it's the Catholic CEO, Henry Kutarna. Welcome to this Catholic Business Wisdom series. Today, we're going to talk about trade, the supply chain, imports and exports. If you're a small business owner, you're going to have to pay attention to how international trade works because you're receiving inputs, things that you buy to build your own product, and they might come from outside of the country. And so you need to be perfectly aware of international trade. You also need to be aware of the subdivisions of international trade, which are imports and exports. Imports, you bring in things into the country, you have to buy them, you might have to pay tariffs on them because your government is creating a protectionist approach. You might have subsidies provided by the government to make the importation easier. And imports are either competitors to your business, or in other words, they are damaging to your business prospects, or they're helpful. Same with exports. You might want to sell your products and your services outside of the country. Well, you might be subject to some export rules, some restrictions. Certain kinds of technologies, for example, cannot be sold outside of the United States or outside of Canada. And these are specifically regulated by government. So you need to pay attention to imports and exports and the whole international trade. Therefore, you have to pay attention also to currency, because international trade, the balance of trade as they call it, the difference between imports and exports in dollar value, is known as the deficit of trade or the surplus of trade. Trade deficit and trade surplus, you hear a lot about that. And it does affect the exchange rate of the currency. So this whole thing about imports and exports and the currency, it's all tied together. And therefore it matters to you, the small business. Then on top of that, I'm going to add the supply chain. You've got this other problem. Can you in fact get what you want to use as inputs to your product? Can you in fact get it? Is there a shipping concern? Are there pricing concerns? Are there delays? Are there political instability situations that all affect your supply chain problems? Similarly, on the export side, can you get your products to market? Can you actually get them to a port and ship them, or get them to an airport and air freight them, or truck them, or do whatever it is that you're going to do to get them out of the country into their ultimate customer? The time that all takes and the money, of course, influences your business. So the whole thing about trade, supply chain, imports and exports is an important topic for your business. I'm going to cover 5 or 6 different points today in this brief audio soundtrack. First of all, let's talk about making your product. This could involve building your service, providing your service as well. But mainly it's about making your product. First of all, you're going to have inputs. You're going to have products or devices or components or parts, right down to the smallest level, that you're going to have to bring into your factory, your shop, in order to do the work. Well, where are you going to get those? Perhaps in the United States, perhaps in Canada, perhaps in Mexico, perhaps in your local area even. But often, electronic components, for example, you might have to import them from offshore, which means that you're going to have import concerns. If you want to build products for your customers and you want to provide to them on time, according to your promise, at a certain price, that means you need to have certainty about your imports. You need to know what the price will be. You need to know how long it will take for that material and equipment and items to arrive, and at what price, and what kind of delays, and what sort of promises the other country, your importer, will require. You may have shipping delays. You may even have customs and immigration delays as they examine your imports, your inputs, which are imports in some cases. You'll also need to be concerned about your supply chain. So you need to be aware of where it's coming from. What are the alternative sources of shipping? Does it get on a ship in a container? Does it get on an airplane? Does it get, if it's in continental North America, does it get on a truck? And how does it cross that border with Mexico? And how does it cross that border with Canada? Is there a NAFTA type agreement or a specific trade policy that allows you to understand, as a small business owner, the smooth nature of your business? I find that many small business owners actually don't pay attention to this whole thing about imports and inputs to their products as they make them. They just look up from their toils, you might say, and they realize, oh, the truck is late, or I just got a notice from the factory offshore that they have some delays in their factory, or they're closed for a seasonal vacation, or something like that. And so my advice to all of us is to pay more attention to this, learn more about your supply chain, and have alternatives. So you have a particular shipping company, or a particular trucking company, or a particular airline, or a particular courier. You need to pay attention to whether they are in fact the best price, in fact if they are the best service provider, in fact if they are the fastest, and you need to have alternatives. So the relationship part of this is important. Your supply chain requires analysis so that you can get the best deal, have alternatives in case of a problem, and in case of competitive pricing matters. But you also need to have the relationships, because you cannot necessarily easily just call on a new shipper, because they don't know you, they don't know if you're going to be able to pay, they don't know how big you are as a customer, they don't know where you stack up. And so my point is, even on the input side, it's important to have the supply chain knowledge, the actual analytical, factual, financial, and time-based knowledge, but also to form the relationships. And so it's important that you spend some time in your busy week looking at who you should be talking to, which agent, which factory representative, how high up the chain, all that sort of thing. So that's the important thing to pay attention to. Let's focus now just for a minute on the exports, the sale of your product. Let's say you've successfully tackled all those import, supply chain, tariffs and duties and delays and money and currency valuations. Let's say you've taken that into account. But now it's time, you've assembled your product, you've put it together, you need to ship it out to the customer, and you've made promises to the customer, you've given financial commitments, you've in fact already paid for a lot of these things. You've either borrowed the money on your line of credit, or you're using your surplus cash, or you're using a bank loan, let's say, to pay for the inputs that you've already received. So you now need to get that to market to your customer quickly, so that they in turn will pay whatever terms you've given them. They will, of course, generally speaking, honor the terms, yes, but they also have to have delivery. And if they don't have delivery, then it's the start of perhaps compounding financial problems. So let us focus on selling our products and taking them to market in much the same way. Who are your shippers? Which airline companies, which freighters, which truckers are you going to engage and contract with? What relationships do you have with them? What is the supply chain at your end of things? Do you actually have frequent and regular pickup? Does it sit on a dock somewhere, or in a forwarding warehouse, or somebody's facility before it even gets going? Is it batched in terms of, let's say you have less than carload lots on a train, or on a ship, in a container, or even on an airplane? An air freighter will have a minimum kind of quantity in those boxes, those cargo containers that they use. If you're less than carload, let's call it, less than full load, you're going to be probably subject to your items sitting somewhere and adding to the delays. If that's a regular occurrence and you can work it into your regular production schedule, okay, great. But what if it's not? What if it's something that is mercurial? What if it's mixed messages all the time, changing circumstances? What if it's not clear? What if there's a perennial problem? Well, the answer lies, as you would expect me to say, in having relationships with other shippers, other exporters, other means of getting your product to market. How many times have I heard a client say, I needed to get something to the customer, they really wanted it badly, I made some deadlines, and so I had to air freight it instead of shipping it. Or similarly with imports, I had to air freight it from overseas and I had to bring it in to my factory. And so the price went up, but I've already been contracted at a lower price, let's say. And so now I have this additional cost. So we need to be careful about our supply chain on the export side too. We need to have the good relationship. Let's say your final product that you're shipping and exporting is an input to somebody else's product in another country or in another part of the US or Canada. Then you have additional problems because the whole system is so intertwined. It's a just-in-time system, as you know. Nobody wants anything to sit in their warehouse. They want that truck to arrive at the front door of the factory, unload, forklift it in, and then package the box and into the input machine to build your product. So take a look at your own supply chain after it leaves your factory, your shop, and determine how much of your business is as a final end product that goes to a customer and how much is an input to another customer. You might have to have two separate policies for dealing with those. You might have to have two kinds of shippers. You might have to pay more attention. If your product is an input to somebody else, you don't want to lose that business. If it's a final product to somebody, let's say it's a consumer product, let's make up an example. You build TVs or you build radios. Well, when they come to my house, and the delivery occurs and it's sitting on my front doorstep when I get home from work, well, it's a final product. And I don't exactly have leverage or the ability to complain to you that it took an extra 3 days to get it to me. But be assured, when your product is an input to another business somewhere else, they're going to be on the phone instantly. When your truck was supposed to arrive at 11 a.m. Tuesday and it's already 4 o'clock Tuesday, they're on the phone right away to you, maybe even at 12 noon. And so let us be careful about our own supply chain on the export finished product side from our business, because it's either an end product to somebody else or it's an intermediate or input to another different business, and it requires special care and attention. We need to watch also exchange rates here when we sell our products. What happens if the currency exchange rates differ? And so you may have to develop certainly on sales and definitely on imports as well, some kind of a hedging strategy. And you'll need to get one of those FX companies, foreign exchange companies as they are called, to work with you to help you hedge and do forward pricing or forward costing so that you're aware, or that you lock in certain prices so that you have some certainty in your business. Because if you're subject to the whims of the foreign exchange markets, you're going to lose margin, you're going to lose profit. And the swings on your small quantity of an exchange rate that may even go up by a fraction of a penny or a quarter of a point, you might find that that has a dramatic effect on your cash flow, your line of credit, your ability to pay. And so you need to pay a lot of attention to that. Similarly, on the export side, you should know what your government is doing, state, province, federal, on subsidies and taxes. Is your industry a favored industry? Does the country that you're shipping to have what they call most favored nation status? Or is it a country that is second or third tier? All of that depends on a lot of political and economic factors, but the result for you as a business owner could be that you're treated as second class, let's call it. And so you need to be paying attention to that. Another idea is to always pay attention to costs, time, interest rates, terms of your agreements with your suppliers, your importers and exports. Pay attention to all of that. Make it your business to know and understand your industry from that perspective, not just from the perspective of the customer or buying and selling your product and shipping it, but the overall kind of picture of a supply chain, a component of a supply chain inside of an international trade market. And even if it's not an international market, you're selling locally within your state or province or within your country, these principles still apply. You need to be an expert on the supply chain, and that's why many companies have a supply chain analyst, or they have people trained to do supply chain analysis. This is all very important. It's a little bit of a summary today in the Catholic Business Wisdom series on trade, imports and exports, and the supply chain, and all of the currency exchange and all of the problems that can occur for your business. Pay attention to it, become more of an expert than you are on it, and try to spot trends. It's important with you when you study particularly alternative sources of media that are offshore. You'll know a little bit more about what's going on in another country that you may not hear locally at home. So hopefully this is of some help to you. Thanks again for being part of this. It's Henry Kutarna, the Catholic CEO. God bless you and your business, and may you prosper in all of the right ways. Thank you.